realizing what it is that we have done. So we're actually going to pick up today, just skipping forward a few lines. We're picking up on page Kuf Yud Gimel, the middle of the page. Ach zos hi chovas ha'adam hayashar. So let's remember again, yesterday we were speaking about the issue of giving advice and how one has to be careful that when dispensing advice, one gives advice that is truly good for the petitioner, for the questioner, for the one who's asking the advice, and not that somehow I'm giving advice to someone else that in some way benefits me. Ach zos, page Kuf Yud Gimel, towards the middle of the page. Ach zos, or a bit below the middle of the page, I should say. Ach zos hi chovas ha'adam hayashar, kasher yavo ish lehis ya'itz bo, ya'atzeo ha'itza shahaya hu nota li'atzmo mamish. When someone comes before you for advice, you have to give them the kind of advice that you would give yourself. In other words, which is another way of saying, just like if you are advising yourself, you of course would advise yourself in a way which promotes your own best interest. So too, when someone comes to you for advice, you have to give them advice that is in line with their best interest. And the only thing to consider when dispensing advice is the benefit of the person who is seeking the advice. You can't dispense advice to someone else for any other purpose. Karov or rachok shiyeh. And Rabbi says this is actually, he says whether it's karov or rachok literally means near or close. What that means, Rabbi says, is that sometimes when someone comes to ask me for advice, so it's clear to me that if I advise them in one way, right, it's beneficial for me, right? And if I advise them in a different way, it's not beneficial for me. That's karov. That's when it's clear. Sometimes my benefiting from the advice that I give is a bit more rachok, is a bit more distant, or not as clear. So Ramchal says a person has to do a self-check. When someone comes to you for advice, they are relying on your wisdom, relying on your outlook, relying on your honesty, on your integrity. And so when you give them advice, and that advice ultimately is really to self-benefit, and I will say, sometimes I can give someone advice that benefits me. It doesn't mean that it's bad for them, right? I want to be clear on this. It doesn't mean that it's bad for them. In other words, I can give them advice that's beneficial to me. It's also beneficial to them, but it's not as beneficial to them as something else. Even in that case, Ramchal says a person has to be careful. Give advice for the benefit of the person who's asking. Listen to what he writes. V'im ya'ara shi'ira hu hezek li'atzmo be'itzahi. We'll say, what happens sometimes, if let's say someone comes to ask me a question, comes to ask advice, and I realize that if I give them the proper advice for them, it's problematic for me. Right? In other words, so we'll say, up until now we were speaking about the idea of giving advice to someone in a way that benefits me. So let's say the following situation, someone comes to ask me advice, and they bless you, and the advice ultimately, again, that I should go ahead and give them, right, is really ultimately disadvantageous for me. It impacts me. It negatively impacts me. So what do I do in such a situation like that? So he writes, So here the Ramchal says something amazing. He says, be honest. Be honest. Meaning, if at the end of the day someone's going to do something that is detrimental to you, disadvantageous to you, tell them. Tell them, right? You could share it. You could share it. Probably, Plony, I know you're coming to me for advice, and it could very well be that the best thing for you to do is A, but know that if you do A, it negatively impacts me. There's nothing wrong with being honest. And he goes on, he says, Ve'em lav, yistalik min hadavar v'lo yatzeu. And Rabbi says sometimes it's also okay to what? To say, you know what, I'm sorry, I can't advise you on this situation. Conflict of interest. Conflict of interest. And again, Ramchal is saying, be honest, right? Just put it out there. If you can't do it, you can't do it. Al kapanim. So it says Ramchal, it's okay to tell someone, by the way, if you choose A, you're going to put me at a disadvantage, and it's okay to tell someone, I'm sorry, I can't give you proper eitzah, because at the end of the day, what's best for you is disadvantageous, right? It's detrimental to me, but whatever you do, and if none of that is good, disengage. Sorry, I can't give you advice. Achal kopanim, Al yatzeu eitza shetachlisa davar zulas tavasa shalom yaitz. But Rachel says, bottom line, whatever you're going to do, you have many options in front of you. Whatever you're going to do is don't give someone skewed advice, because that is a true betrayal of trust. Right? Giving someone skewed advice, giving someone advice that's not good for them, it's just good for you, that is the ultimate betrayal of a relationship. I will say, when someone comes and asks you advice, they are putting their complete trust in your integrity. And when you betray that trust for your own self-advancement, says the Ramchal, that's a terrible thing. He goes on. Obviously, I will say, if the intention of the person asking the advice is something detrimental as well, then of course, again, she will say, so okay, this is a more extreme case, where he's talking about over here, that if someone ultimately, again, wants to do something bad, I can give them advice which sabotages their negative activities. Okay, so that I'm allowed to do. He gives examples like Kvar Ne'amar, Vim Ikesh Tispatal, V'chushai Ha'ark Yochiach. Fine, we'll say page Kuf Yedalid. Next, Harachilos. What's Rechilos, right? Rechilos, Lashon Hara, Kvar Chumru Noda V'godol Anaf of Kirab Mod. We'll say, so again, moving down our list of interpersonal infractions that people often violate without even realizing that they've done something wrong. Next is Rechilos, Lashon Hara. So we'll say, so again, if you look in the footnote 154, just to define our terms, what's Rechilos? So we often use just these terms interchangeably. Rechilos, Lashon Hara, it all means slander. Obviously, if they have different words, they mean different things. So if you look at the footnote 154, it says, Ezu Rachil, Zeh Shetoin Dvarim V'holich Mizeh Lezeh V'omer. Kach Amar Ploni Alecha, V'kach Aseh Lecha. Afa Pisha Osa Davar Enugnus, Ach Gorim Shashomea Yakpid V'yichas Asher Sibro Alav Kach. So we'll say, Rechilos comes from a lashon of rochel, right? A rochel is a spice salesman. What does the spice salesman do? He goes person to person peddling his wares. What does the rochel do? He goes did you hear what Ploni said? Did you hear what he said? Did you hear about this? Did you hear about this? So we'll say, inevitably, if you do that, you're going to end up upsetting someone, because you're going to share with them something that someone else said that they're going to perceive in some way as being negative or detrimental. That's rechilos. That's rechilos, walking around. Lashon Hara, on the other hand, if you look at 155, Yesh Avan Gadol Mizemi Rechilos, he's quoting over here from the Rambam. There is even something worse than rechilos. Because remember again, rechilos itself may not necessarily entail telling over something negative. It really just entails going ahead and sharing something that someone else said, potentially about another. But lav dafka, that ultimately, again, it's something slanderous or negative. It's just that, again, if you get into the habit of going ahead and sharing information with this one and with that one, this one said this, that one said that, it'll lead to something negative. Lashon Hara, on the other hand, page footnote 155, Yesh avan gadol mizeh, amavu bichlal lav zeh, shalo selech rachil, v'lashon hara, v'hamasaper beginus chaveiro, afa pi shomer. So I'll say Lashon Hara is where you dafka say negative things about another person. That's Lashon Hara. Even though it's, of course, the most famous follow-up for every statement of Lashon Hara is, but it's true, right? And it's usually said with that inflection, right? But it's true, right? But it's true, right? So I was okay. I know that it's true. It's still Lashon Hara. It's still Lashon Hara. So we'll say, so therefore we'll have to stop over here for today, but we'll pick up with this tomorrow. This next category of interpersonal infractions that people end up violating without even realizing that they are violating, but yet cause so much damage. Rechilos, Lashon Hara, Emeretz Hashem, to be continued tomorrow. All right, Rabbi, say good morning. Let's begin. Brand new parak, brand new opportunities. Emeretz Hashem. Our shir this morning is dedicated by Meir and Chava Weinheber, in memory of Meir's grandmother, Malka Perel, Bas Henoch Yosef, on the occasion of her second yahrzeit. We hope that on the merit of our Talmud Torah, the Neshama will have an aliyah, and the family a nechama. We'll say a shir is also dedicated by Adam and Yudit Ben Zev. They are the Talmud Torah sponsor for the month of Cheshvan, in memory of Adam's grandfather, in honor of Adam's grandmother and his parents, for serving as such wonderful role models. And with that, let's begin. Incredible sugya today. Really quite fascinating Gemara. Top of Yud Gimel. So we'll say, literally translated, the more a woman does bedikos, the more a woman does bedikos, mishubachas. This is praiseworthy. If you look at Rashi, just a moment, kol yad amar livdok shebodekes tamid shema rasa. Any woman who constantly does bedikas, constantly checks herself to see if she's bleeding, ultimately, again, this is mishubachas. Why is this mishubachas? Says Rashi, shemitoch kach lo asili de safek tuma ubayla lo asili de isura. Because we'll say this way, if she's constantly checking, then what? She never comes to any kind of safek tuma, and her husband will never come to any kind of isra. Isra being ultimately inadvertent relations with a niddah. So incredible. Uba anoshim tikatzetz. So say very dramatic Gemara. But any man who constantly checks himself, ultimately, again, his hand should be cut off. Okay? Dr. Goldberg, you joined just mamish, like in the middle of exciting. I made it exciting for you. So says the Gemara, so Anoshim Tikatzes, right? But by men, ultimately, again, his hand should be cut off. We'll say, what is this talking about? Uba Anoshim, Rashi says, Shebodek atzmo tadir ba'amaso shemayotso mimeni keri. So we're actually going to see any man who constantly checks himself for a seminal emission, which means Rabbi, he's touching himself, then halacha l'maisa, the Gemara says tikatzetz. That hand, of course, it's a metaphor. Well, we'll assume it's a metaphor. Tikatzetz, his hand should be cut off. Why? Rashi says shemischamim umargish keshememashmish ba'amo umosi shich vazar levatala. Because sometimes in the process of checking himself, it leads to arousal, and that arousal itself ultimately again could lead to a seminal emission. So we'll say, so this is going to be our topic for today. So we'll say, so I just want to point out something amazing just from the beginning of the Mishnah. So already the beginning of the Mishnah sounds a bit problematic or a bit challenging. Why? Because remember again, we ended off the last sugya as discussing the idea that in general we try to minimize bedikos, and yet here you go ahead and you have kol hayat hamar b'livdok b'noshim mishubachas. So I want to point out something very important here. Shulchan Aruch in Hilchos Niddah is in Yeridea, and Siman Kuf Pei Dalet Sif Aleph qualifies this. And just as I'm not going to read you the whole halacha, but the part that's important for us is aval shelo b'shas tashmish kol hamar b'livdok harezeh mishubachas. This halacha of kol hayad hamar b'harezeh mishubachas is a din not by bedikos, by tashmish. Because remember again, we already established in yesterday's daf that we try to minimize the number of bedikos surrounding tashmish. Why? Shemalibo nokfo uporish, right? He might find the whole thing repulsive and therefore ultimately distance himself from his wife. So the extra bedikos, or the riboy of bedikos over here, is talking about shalo bishas tashmish. So again, now even that we're going to qualify more in terms of is that true all the time? Conventionally, we don't paskin that way. But again, we'll see the qualifications of it. So we'll say, here we go. It says the Gemara, Maishna nashim maishna anoshim. So we'll say, why is it? What a strange Mishnah. So the Mishnah says, any woman who constantly checks herself to see if she's a niddah, that's mishubachos. That's good. Yet any man who constantly checks himself to see if he's had a seminal emission, we'll say, remember again, so tikatzetz, that his hand should be cut off, we'll say, is not like, it's not just like that it's not good, right? We prefer you don't do it, right? And it's a very strong lashon that says this is something very, very bad. So why the discrepancy? So the Gemara says very simply, Noshim delav benos hargoshan inhu mishubachos. Anoshim de bnei hargoshan inhu tikatzetz. But we'll say for one simple reason, if a woman does more bedikos, ultimately again there's no downside to that, so to speak. But if a man is constantly checking himself, ultimately for seminal emissions, so the concern would then be that what? That as a result of his checking and therefore touching himself, that'll lead to arousal. That arousal could lead to a seminal emission. So in the process of quote-unquote checking himself, ultimately he could lead himself to very serious averos. Ihachi, my area marbe. If that's the case, then why does the Mishnah talk about? So I will say the way the Mishnah reads is kalayad hamarbe livdok benoshim mishuvachus ubanoshim tikatis, which sounds like what? That by anoshim, by men, if you're marbe tikatis. But if this is a concern that if a man consistently checks himself for a seminal emission, that in and of itself could lead to a seminal emission, then what? It's not a din in ribui. Really, the halacha should be what? He really shouldn't check himself at all. To which the Gemara says, so I'll say ultimately you're right. The marbe is actually on women. Right? So the way to read the Mishnah is kalayat hamarbe livdog benoshim mishubachos. Right? Any woman who checks often and frequently, mishubachos ubanoshim. But for a man to check himself even infrequently, tikatzeitz. So the Gemara says, Tana b'medar mamurim. When is this halacha stated? Or as I will say, when do we say that we don't want a man checking himself? Le'inyan shichvas zera. So we'll say that is when it comes to a seminal emission. We don't want a man checking himself frequently or even infrequently for a seminal emission. Aval le'inyan zov. But I will say if there's an issue, if he's concerned that it might be a zov, then what? So the Gemara. So we'll say before we get to this, I'm sorry. Zov afu meshubach kinoshim. I will say, but ultimately, if he wants to check himself because of zov, then ultimately that is commendable. Just like a woman who goes ahead and does frequent bedikos. Now look at Rashi for just a moment ago. Say the inyan ziva sheyatsa zov mimenu. Verotza livdok k'dei limnos re'iosav shtayim l'tuma v'shal shekarbon. So we'll say zov, and we're going to get into this sugya as well. But Zav has different halachas. Zav could ultimately, again, be, depending on what the circumstances are, right? 2 re'ios could generate tuma, 3 re'ios could generate carbonic obligation. So there might be a need for him to see exactly what it is that's going on. So the Gemara now makes a chilik. So first, Rashi just points out over here, Zov doma lemei batzak. So we'll get into this later. A Zav emission looks different than a seminal emission. So therefore, halacha lemaisa, the Gemara is saying over here, the Mishnah's statement about not checking is a din in keri, in checking if he had a seminal emission. But ultimately, again, for Zav, it is mushubach. So the Gemara says, Va'afil inyan shichva zera. And even if a man wants to check himself, if there was a seminal emission, in bal livdok, bitzrar o becheres bodek. So this is actually interesting. If he wants to check with a tzrar, we'll say tzrar literally means a stone, cheres means a pottery shard. I'll say, be careful with this, by the way. Right? So I'll say, sorry. So what does this mean? What this means is like this. The concern is that if a man is checking himself for a seminal emission, that itself could lead to arousal. The assumption is if you're using something cold to manipulate yourself to check, that is not going to cause arousal. So a stone, a pottery shard, where there's no warmth generated in that, like there is ultimately with touch. So therefore, again, that won't lead to arousal. So Gemara says, matlis lo. Why do you leave out of this a matlis? Right, the matlis is a cloth. In other words, I would have thought that maybe as long as a person doesn't touch himself when going ahead and checking, that should be enough. So why can't he use a cloth? So the Gemara says, matlis lo, and it's true, you can't use a matlis. Vatanya, we learned, bodek atzmo b'matlis. A person could check himself with a cloth and with anything else, right? So you see that a cloth does work. Why is it left out? Abai, so the Gemara says, Kidam Rabbi b'matlis ava, hachadai b'matlis ava. So Abai qualifies this. So mostly we're going to Abai qualified this in a different context. We'll qualify it here as well. You could use a cloth, but what kind of cloth? Ultimately, again, a thick cloth. Rashi says, "Matlis ava kashihi ve'ela mechamemes." It is so apparently the thicker cloths were also a bit rougher. So because it was a bit rougher, there's no concern for any kind of arousal. Vehecha itmar dabai. We'll say, where did Abai speak about the thicker cloth? So the Gemara says, "Aha disnan." This is actually quite interesting. Haya ocha b'truma. So we'll say this is a kohen. This is a kohen. So if a kohen was eating truma, vehirgish shenizdazu evarav. And literally translated, he felt his limbs shake. So we'll say he felt his limbs shake in a way that indicates a seminal emission. Now here's the problem. If he's in the middle of eating truma, so we'll say if he has a seminal emission, that's problematic because halacha l'maisa, a kohen who's a bal keri can't eat truma. So what does he do? Ochez ba'amaso. So literally again, he tries to hold the zera in. He tries to hold the semen in by holding himself. Ubolea es truma, and he swallows the truma. So we'll say, so he tries to prevent the semen from exiting his body until he can swallow the truma that's in his mouth. And then obviously after that, he becomes a balkari. Once he becomes a balkari, then halacha l'maisa, of course, again, the laws of Tumah will set in. So the Gemara says, Vatanya, Rabbi Eliezer Omer. We'll say, so now, this leads, by the way, to another incredible sugya that's found both in Orach Chaim and in Even HaEzer, which is as follows. Vamarava, so the Gemara, Vatanya. I'm sorry. Oh, so Gemara says, Oches, is that true that he could hold himself? V'atanya Rabbi Eliezer Omer kala Oches ba'amasa umashtin. I will say, whoever holds himself, right, whoever holds the aver while urinating, kilu mevi mabul la'olam. It's as if he brings a mabul to the world. Now I will say, we're going to discuss the context of this in just a moment. So you see from here that in the eyes of Chazal, when urinating, again, one is not supposed to touch themselves either, right? And if one touches the aver, then ultimately, again, we'll see what the reference to the mabul is. The point is, it's not good, right? Whatever it means, we'll see in a moment. So how could we suggest that the Kohen over here go ahead and literally hold himself, which he's preventing the zera from coming out, swallow the truma. But again, why would we do that? So the Gemara says, Rabbi b'matlis ava. What is the Kohen holding himself with? He's holding himself with a thick cloth. So in that kind of situation, there's no concern for any kind of arousal. So we'll say we'll get into the urinating piece over here in just a moment. But amazingly enough, what it's saying over here is again the same concern that if one goes ahead and holds themselves while urinating, that could lead to arousal as well. So the Gemara says, Rava says, Afilu matlis raka. Even with this, you could even use a soft cloth. Kevan the akar. The case of the Kohen is a little bit different. I will say why. Because the truth is, there's not so much of a concern about arousal by the Kohen. Why is there not a concern about arousal by the Kohen? Because I will say, again, remember, he's already in a state of being motzi zera, right? The situation over here is he wants to prevent the zera from coming out until he swallows the truma that's in his mouth. So in this case over here, even a soft cloth would be fine because there's no real issue of arousal. So the Gemara says, V'abaye chayesh doma asila asufe. But Abaye, who says that he can use a thick cloth, not a soft cloth, is concerned ultimately again about being mosif. That apparently Abaye felt that if he becomes aroused even during this, it could increase the amount of zera that he emits. So the Gemara says, Rava lo chayesh doma asila asufe. Is Rava not concerned that that he could increase the amount of zera that will exit the body? Vatanya, we learned ha lama zedoma. To what can this be compared to? Lenosein etzba ba'ayin, like one who puts their finger in their eye. Shekozman she'etzba ba'ayin ayim midama'as v'chozeres umidama'as. So what it's saying over here is, just like if a person puts their finger in their eye, they'll begin to tear, right? So it's not the pshat, okay, once it's there, the longer you keep the finger in the eye, or the more you put the finger in the eye, the more you begin to tear. So again, I will say, it works with arousal as well, that the more one stimulates oneself, so the more ultimately, again, the arousal is there. In other words, arousal intensifies, and if arousal intensifies, the amount of zera can intensify as well. To which the Gemara says, Rava, kol achmumi v'hadrachmumi. B'shaite lo shchiach. So Rava will say, yes, it is possible ultimately to increase arousal, but what he calls b'shaite, when there's an actual ejaculation that's occurring, right? When the man is actually being motzi zera, which is happening over here at the Kohen, in that case, there's no concern about being mosif zera, right? Whatever zera is coming out is going to come out. If he ends up touching himself in an effort to prevent the zera from coming out, we're not concerned that's going to create more zera. Good. So now the Gemara goes back for just a moment. So so now we understand. It's a statement in the Mishnah, right? Kalayat hamarbe livdok b'nasha mishubacha. So the halacha telling us that by women shelo b'shas tashmish, Apparently, the more bedikos they do mishubachos, but by a man, we don't want him doing any kind of bedikos. So again, it could be that that's a din in keri, but maybe ultimately, again, by zov, we would be okay with bedikos. But again, even those bedikos have to be done either with certain things, certain. In order to ensure that there's no arousal. That would be the goal. So whether it's a matlis ava, thicker cloth, a tzura, or a cheres, Rabbi said the idea here being that in the pursuit of trying to ascertain whether or not one is tahar, one has to avoid leading to any kind of arousal, which could then go ahead and lead to hotzas zera, to emitting of zera. So the Rabbi said now the Gemara goes back and analyzes something you said before. Gufa, Rabbi Lazar Omer. So I'll say anyone who holds himself while he goes ahead and he urinates, it's as if he brought a mabul to the world. Then I will say, so what does one thing have to do with the other? Look at Rashi. Kilumevi mabul. Rashi says, Sha'avera zu haisa bi'adam. Ki hishchis kol basar va'amru beroschen kilkul. So Chazal teach us that one of the averos of the Dor HaMabul was hotzas zera levatala, was the wasting of seed. And therefore, again, the Gemara says over here that anyone who engages in activity that could lead to the wasting of seed, hotzas zera levatala, it's as if he brought a mabul to the world. Amru lo l'Rabbi Eliezer. So listen to this. So therefore, the Gemara seems to be saying over here that when you urinate, the Gemara says when you right. This is not like a metaphor, right? It's not like some deeper analytical meaning over here or esoteric meaning. The Gemara is saying that when a person urinates, they shouldn't hold themselves, right? They shouldn't hold themselves, lest if you hold yourself, if you touch yourself, it could lead ultimately again to arousal, which could lead to otzah zar levatala, which is exceptionally chamer. To which the Gemara says v'haloni tzotsos nitzin al raglov. But I will say, if that's the case, then a person could get urine on themselves. And I will say, this is not just a hygiene issue. So I'll say, so literally what it means is droplets could go ahead and come on their shoes. Right? So the Gemara says, so we'll say, what is the ramification ultimately again of droplets coming on the shoes? So the Gemara says, Venira kikrus shavcha. And I will say, a person could look like a krus shavcha. So we'll say, krus shavcha is a person who has, for him, both zera as well as urine does not come out in a stream. It trickles. So we'll say, as a result, such a person ultimately, again, is incapable of having children. And in fact, a krus shavcha is someone who is not permitted to marry into the general pool of Klal Yisrael. Krus shavcha has a din almost like a mamzer. So I will say, so one of the ways in which you would be able to tell if someone is a krus shavcha is if ultimately they have droplets of urine on their shoes. That would mean that the stream of urine does not go away from the body, but instead it trickles down. So both say, so aren't we concerned that you're going to cast aspersions ultimately on the person? Then I will say, now here's the problem. Not only are you casting aspersions on the person, but what? But ultimately, again, then their children would also potentially be labeled as mamzerim. Because if a krus shavcha has kids, one thing is pretty clear, which is what? He's not the father. He's not the father, and someone else is, and isn't that problematic? So the Gemara says, supposed to say this is wild. Amar lahen, mutav sheyotzi laz albanav shehi mamzerin v'al yasa atzmo rasha sha'achas lifnei hamakom. We'll say, what a dramatic statement. It is better for him to have a chashash of mamzerus on his kids than he should do something inappropriate in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu for one moment. And as we both say, so severe is the prohibition of hashchasas zera levatala, of the wasting of seeds. So severe is that prohibition that it would be better if the halacha would prefer that at the end of the day we go ahead and have a laz on his kids, have a laz on this guy, than to do something chas v'shalom that is even potentially problematic of this nature. Tanya idach. So we have another brayso that supports this. Hamlin Rabbi Eliezer chachamim. Efshar yamot adam b'makom gavoa v'yashtin. O yashin ba'afar tichuach va'al yasa atzmo rasha sha'achas lifnei hamakom. So we'll say there's another brayso, and in this brayso, interestingly enough, Rabbi Eliezer is going ahead and giving an eitzah, right? And in his eitzah, we'll say what he's saying is a person could urinate from a high point. We'll say, remember again the issue of droplets, right? The issue of I guess droplets is the right word, right? Of droplets of urine is if he's urinating right in front of him. So maybe if a person is makbid to dafka urinate, at a height, right? So therefore, again, the urine goes straight down. There's no concern about any kind of splashback on the person. Or afar tichuach. Afar tichuach means loose earth. So I'll say sometimes when the urine splashes back is when a person is urinating on hardened earth. But if it's soft earth, ultimately the urine is absorbed. So the Gemara says, so we'll say, now two different brises of Rabbi Eliezer. So the Gemara says, Hey Amar Lahu Bereisha. Which one did Rabbi Eliezer say first? So the Gemara says, Ilema Kamaisa. If you want to say he said the first brisa first, so the Gemara says, Ilema Kamaisa Bereisha. Basar Damla Yisura Hada Amru Takanta. Elaha Amru Bereisha Va'amru Le Elo Makom Gavoa Afar Tichuach Mai. So we'll say, so apparently the order of the brisa is like this. Rabbi Eliezer says, ideally, a person should go in when they're urinating. A person should not touch themselves when urinating. So therefore, again, in order to avoid any type of droplets on your feet, what should you do? Urinate from a high vantage point or into soft dirt. That's the first brisa. Rabbi Eliezer, what happens if you can't find a height from which to urinate from, or you can't find loose earth? What should you do then? To which Rabbi Eliezer responds with the second brisa. We'll say the second brisa is the one we mentioned first, which says that what? Sorry, if you don't have a height, you don't have loose earth, that's, then you urinate, but you still can't touch yourself, and it is better to go ahead and even have the appearance of a krushavcha, your children to have the appearance of mamzerim, and not to do something that has potential problematic ramifications with hotzaz zera levatala in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So the Gemara says as follows. Fine. So the Gemara says, "V'kol kach lama." I will say, so why so intense, right? Why such intensity when talking about that a person shouldn't touch themselves when urinating? V'chol kach lama. We'll say, because here we go. Because we'll say the concern over here that we're dealing with is a wasting of seed. Dum Rabbi Yochanan, kalamotzi shifcha zera levatala chayiv misa. We'll say that ultimately again, whoever's motzi shifcha zera levatala is chayiv misa. It's a very serious infraction. Shnei Amar vayira be'eni Hashem eis asher asa vayamos oso. So we'll say, so ultimately again, this vayamos kamo. So this is by Er and Onan, right? This is by the sons of Yehuda who died because they did not want to impregnate Tamar and they wasted their seeds. So we see already in the Chumash that HaKadosh Baruch Hu treats this particular sin with incredible severity. Rabbi Yitzchak, the Gemara says, Rabbi Yitzchak, Rabbi Ami Amri, Kilu Shofech Damim. It's as if one spills blood. Shene Emar, quotes over here the pasuk from Yeshaya, Hanichamim be'elim tachas kol itzra anan, shochate hayiladim benechalim. So I'll say over here the pasuk is making reference ultimately again to those who slaughter the children. So the Gemara says over here, Al tikre shochte ella sochte. We'll say sochte means to squeeze out. What does it mean to those who squeeze out the children? So the Gemara is making a reference over here to those who waste their zera, those who waste their seed, who are effectively wasting children, so to speak. So again, another pasuk in Navi telling us about the severity of this. Rabbi Asi says, Kilo ovid kochavim. Incredible, right? That a person who is motzi zera levatala, it's as if he worships idolatry. Ksiv hacha, Tachas kol itzra anan, oksiv hasam al haharim haramim, v'tachas kol itzra anan. So we'll say over here, the pasuk says over here, Tachas kol itzra anan, and it says by Avodah Zarah, Tachas kol itzra anan. He uses the same lashon by Otzaz zera levatala as it does ultimately again by Avodah Zarah. Rabbi Yehuda Shmuel havu. So we'll say fine. So that therefore, what's driving this entire sugya, we'll say, which is why some of this stuff, you read this and it sounds like really like a person's urinating, and again we'll see exceptions to this rule as well. But lamaisa, the severity that's driving this entire sugya is the concern ultimately again of wasting zera, of wasting seed. Rabbi Yehuda Shmuel have a kamya igra. We'll say an interesting story. Yehuda and Shmuel were standing on the rooftop, de Beiknishta de Shav Yosef. They were sitting on the rooftop, ultimately again of the shul of Shav Yosef. We'll say, presumably that's the name of the city, right? The shul or the name of the shul, right? The Shav Yosef. Ben Arda was in the city of Narda. Amrli Rabbi Yehuda Shmuel. So Rabbi Yehuda said to Shmuel, Sarachani lahashtin, Rabbi, I have to go to the bathroom, right? So we'll say, so remember again. So you have to understand something. We'll say, halacha governs everything. Halacha governs everything. So here we say to ourselves, can you imagine this conversation happening contemporarily? Right? Rabbi, you have to go to the bathroom. Okay, Hatzlacha. What's? But again, I will say you're going to see over here the issue is one of halacha. So Rabbi says, Rabbi. So Rabbi who says to Shmuel, Rabbi tzarchni lahashtin. Right, I have to go to the bathroom. Amrlei shinina achuz ba'amascha v'hashtin lachutz. So Shmuel tells Rabbi Yehuda, shinina, sharp one, right? Tam tchacham, hold yourself, right, and urinate out. Remember, they're standing on a rooftop. So he says, hold yourself and urinate out. So Gemara says, Hechi avid hachi. 1 second. How could Shmuel have told Rabbi Yehuda to hold himself, to touch himself while urinating? Vatanya. We just learned before that what? That if a person goes in and touches themselves while urinating, it's as if what? They bring a marble to the world. Abaye asa'u kiboleshes. So Abaye said they treated this case like a boleshes. So both say boleshes literally means like an invading army. What does this mean? Watch this. This is actually quite interesting. This nan. Boleshes shenichnas leir b'shas shalom chavios psuchos asuros tumos mutar. Supposed to listen to this. Let's say you have Gentile soldiers who enter into a Jewish city. So both say, what's the shaila? What's going to be the status of my wine? Right? Do I have to be concerned that the soldiers got into my wine? So the Gemara says, if it's a time of peace, then what? Any open barrels are yayin nesech or stam yenam, right? You have to assume that the soldiers touch the open barrels and therefore not good. Any closed barrels are okay. We don't assume the soldiers go into the closed barrels. B'shas milchama, but if it's a time of war, elu v'elu muteres. Lefi she'ein lehem pnai lenasech. We'll say if it's a time of war, then what? We assume that all of the barrels are mutter. Why? Because we'll say when it's wartime, they're not offering libations to their God. So we'll say, so what do you see from here? Alma, so we'll say what you see from here is Alma, the kevon de ba'isila asila nesuche. You see from here that when people are scared of things, right, when there's a yira, so things change. So just like when there's a yira, I'm not concerned that the soldiers had in mind for their avodah zarah, because they're focused on the yira. Yira focuses you. Hachenami, so too over here. Shmuel said to Rabbi Yehuda, Kevan de ba'isi lo asi le'erhure. Since you're scared, you're not going to come to arousal. We'll say, V'hacha bi isusa ika. So we'll say, what was Rabbi Yehuda fearful of? So the Gemara says, Ibaisima bi isusa delayla. This story apparently happened that night. So he was scared. In other words, he was nervous. It was nighttime. He's on a roof. Ika bi isusa delayla udiigra. He was scared. It was nighttime and he was on a roof. So we'll say, generally, nighttime on a roof could be a little bit of a dangerous combination, and so he was nervous. And by the way, the other piece over here is he's not just on the roof, but remember again, where is he urinating? Where is he? Off the ledge of the roof. So we'll say, so the mice again at the end of the day, he's concerned. So because he's concerned, because there's a fear, no arousal. Rabbi. So the other piece over here is he is relieving himself in front of his Rabbi. It's got to be awkward, right? So I'll say therefore there's like a nervousness, like a fear. Like this would be more like a nervousness of his Rebbe's right here. So that's also again he's not going to come to arousal. It's incredible. Or the other possibility is he just had a fear of the Shechina. Then I will say it appears that what this means is that remember this is taking place on the rooftop of a shul, of a mikdash ma'at, of the home of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in this world. Remember again, without the base HaMikdash, so the Rebbe Shalom resides in each and every one of our Batei Knesios. So he's urinating off the top of the roof of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's home. So that in and of itself engenders a certain level of anxiety. V'bay Seima, so the Gemara says, Aim say demari ale. We'll say, by the others say, this was Rabbi Yehuda's disposition in general. Rabbi Yehuda was a person who walked around with an incredible and overwhelming feeling of awe of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Rabbi Yehuda lived the principle of Shivisi Hashem Lenegdi Samid. He recognized that he was always before HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Look at Rashi, Imsa Demare HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Va'afilu b'makom acher nami shari lididei. It could be that what Shmuel was saying with Rabbi Yehuda to someone like you, this is incredible, someone like you, who lives in the constant presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So you could imagine such a thing like this. To live in the constant presence of the Ribbon Shalom, literally, Shivisi Hashem Lenegdi Samid, to someone who lives like that, for you, there's no concern about arousal as a result of urinating. So the Gemara says, the Kari Ale Shmuel, like Shmuel used to say about Rabbi Huda, Ein Ze Yelod Isha. He used to say, this man, he conducts himself as if he's not immortal. As if he is not a mortal, right? As if he is not born to woman. So the Gemara says another possibility, and here we get to kind of like the codification of this halacha, Nasui Haya. Rabbi Huda was married. So we'll say, what does that matter? Da Amar Rav Nachman, Im Haya Nasui Mutter. That apparently, again, if a man is married, he can hold himself during urination. Why Rabbi will say? Because the assumption is as follows. The assumption is that halacha lemaisa, if a married man becomes aroused, because he has a permitted way to go ahead and deal with that arousal, ultimately he will not come to Otzaz Zera Levatala. V'bay Sema, ki ha'orile, detani Abba Breid Rabbi Yam Barchia, aval misayeya bebeitzim milamata. But the other possibility is actually quite interesting, is that the issue over here of arousal is only when one touches what's called the gid, the ama, right? But if one goes ahead and holds himself by the beitzim, then apparently, again, there's not the concern about arousal. V'bay Sema, ki ha'orile, da Amar Rabbi Yava, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, gvul yesh lo me'atara ulamata mutter. Also, another possibility is that when urinating, a person can hold themselves, but where? Mamish only at the tip, right by the opening of the aver, where the urine exits the body. You can hold yourself in that area because there's not a concern for arousal. It's only the rest of the area of the ama, of the aver of the gid, where ultimately, again, there that's what it means. Gvul yeshlo, there is a gvul, is a boundary. Me atara ulamata. Atara, of course, is the tip. The lashon of the Gemara is called the crown. Ulamata. We'll say lamata means out, down, right? Down meaning down. So if the aver is facing down, away from the body. So the Gemara says, me'atara amabeis, me'atara lamala, but I will say from the tip and above, which means closer to the body, then ultimately, again, this will be asr. This halacha lamaisa will be something that is no texting. No texting. Give me take away your phone in just a second. One more time. So we'll say ultimately, again, so halacha lamaisa. So we see two incredible qualifications over here. So we'll say so number one, ultimately, again, it could be that if a person is married, this whole halacha changed. So we'll say actually a number of qualifications. So first of all, we see as a halacha, and I will say, I want to point out to you, this is in fact a halacha. Again, I'll share with you the Shulchan Aruch as we hopefully in a little bit as we get towards the end of the sugya. But we begin to see a couple of qualifications to halacha. So apparently one is not permitted to hold themselves when going ahead and urinating, right? Out of a fear that this could cause arousal. Qualifications to this halacha: fear, if a person is in a situation where there's some type of ema, so with this fear there's not arousal, that's possibility one. Possibility two is to hold oneself by the beitzim. Possibility three is that apparently it doesn't apply to someone who is married, right? And possibility four is to hold oneself, again, really by the edge of the tip, right by where the urine exits. And apparently, again, Chazal felt that would not create a situation of arousal. Good, Rabbi said, to which the Gemara says as follows: Amarav. I will say, by the way, you see again how much Chazal were so concerned about the issue of Hotzas Zera Lebatala. We'll say this is not the venue for this discussion, but it's something that often, to be honest, it's an issue that's not discussed, but it's an issue that's every healthy boy growing up, right, encounters this challenge. And it's, on one hand, the Isser is so grave. We see it. The Isser is so grave. But let's say it's not like there's, like one person says, it's kilu mevi mabula olam, right? Yichai misas ravoda zara. And yeshomrim, it's okay, right? There's no back and forth with this. But yet Rabbi says, so on one hand you have an Isser that is so chamer, yet you have an Isser that is part and parcel of like normal maturation. right, reflects a desire, a healthy desire. And again, and to think that this is not something that I think that most people are nichshel in at different stages of life is ridiculous, right? And pretending like okay, we have of course. So. I'm just again, this is not a topic for today. That topics like this require a different type of venue with a smaller group and certainly not recorded and streaming online, right? But again, it's important because again, if you have teenage sons, right, and so just understand like this is a real struggle. It's a real struggle. And proper parenting and proper hadracha and an incredible balance of, on one hand, recognizing that you have normal desires and certain things happen, and even though something might be chamar, figuring out how to find that balance and how do you deal with something that is unequivocally usher, but yet so commonplace. Just pointing out, it's something to think about, and I think one of the significant challenges when trying to be magic and trying to raise a ben Torah. So the Gemara says as follows: Amarav, hamakasha atzmo ladas yeh benidui. We'll say if somebody purposely, intentionally arouses himself, right? So again, I will say, makasha atzmo ladas literally means a person causes himself to become aroused. So what's the halacha? Yeh benidui. We'll say, so this is actually interesting lashon. It literally means he should be excommunicated. So we'll say, now what does this mean? He's not literally excommunicated. No, he's not literally. So we'll say, what it means is that halacha l'maisa is a statement of this is a very severe act. V'lema aser. Why don't you just say it's aser? What do you mean yeh benidui? To which the Gemara says, de kamagri yitzahara anafshe. So we'll say this is an absolutely incredible Gemara. So we'll say if somebody arouses himself, so we'll say sometimes the yitzahara, comes my way and tempts me, but to go out of my way to arouse myself for avera, that's even a different level. Again, a person is presented with an isayon, a person sees something, a person is in a situation, then okay, that's one level of challenge. But to bring the challenge upon yourself, the Gemara says, that's a different level. That's a different level. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Ami Amar Nikra Avarion. Rabbi Ami says, ultimately such a person is called an Avarion, a sinner. Shekach nasal shel Yetzara. Because Rabbi say, this is where the Yetzara works. Hayom Omer lo asekach. Today the Yetzara says, why don't you do this? Ulamachar Omer lo asekach. Tomorrow he says, do this. Ulamachar Omer lo leich oved aveles kachavim. And then the third day he says, why don't you go worship idolatry? V'holech va'oved. And Rabbi say, we laugh at this, but what? This is exactly how things work. Each of us, I guarantee you, each of us could point to how stuff like this happened in our lives. Lav dafka avodah zara, right? Rabbi say, but sometimes the pathway to sin begins with the smallest innocuous things. And then one day I do something and I say to myself, I can't believe I did this. I can't believe I did this. This is so not me. But here's something amazing. If you retrace your steps, and it's an incredibly instructive process, if you make a big mistake in life, which inevitably we all do, you retrace your steps, you begin, it's amazing. The first step that led me to this colossal mistake was nothing major. It was something relatively small. And then the next time a little bit bigger, and the next time a little bit bigger, until ultimately again the colossal mistake occurs. So we'll say that's why Chazal have such strong words for a person who arouses himself. Why? Again, a person sees something they can't control. A person is in a situation they can't control. Stuff happens in life. But to arouse yourself and to lead oneself to Avera, to invite the Yitzhahara into you, that Chazal said, why? Why invite challenge? There's enough challenge that's visited upon us. Maybe Rabbi say this is also dramatic Gemara. Whoever brings himself to hirhur. Rabbi say hirhur means impure thoughts. Impure thoughts. If a person brings himself to hirhur, so we'll say, so this is different than the first Gemara. The first Gemara was mekasha atzmo. Literally, a person is actively arousing themselves. The second Gemara over here is whoever allows himself, whoever person constantly cogitates on impure things, at the end of the day, ultimately, again, a person is ein machnisin also mechitzal shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Well, says a dramatic Gemara. What does it mean? What does this mean? So a person brings himself to impure thoughts after 120. It doesn't say you're going to Gehenna, right? It doesn't say you're going to get Malchus, but rather, what does it say? Purity of mind is what is necessary for closeness to God. And this, we all know, this is probably one of the hardest things. I can regulate behavior. It's much harder to regulate thought. Yet the Gemara says it is purity of mind, purity of thought that leads to personal purity and spiritual holiness. You want to come close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, saying, it's not just enough to regulate your behaviors. I have to regulate my thoughts as well. So that's called Mevius Atzmo Lidei Hirhur, a Machnisin also Michitzaso Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So Rabbi say, it doesn't mean if Hirhur pops into my head. A lot of times I can't control if impure thoughts pop into my head. But what do I control? What do I control? If I allow them to remain there. So Shulchan Aruch discusses. Shulchan Aruch says this is why sometimes there's a din. Person gets impure thoughts, do something to remove them. Right? Go ahead and open a chumash, open a siddur, say a kapitel of Tehillim, do something, walk into the base medrash, do something, whatever you can, to drive the thoughts out of your mind. I can't necessarily prevent them from entering in the first place, but I absolutely can decide if I want to allow them to reside there. So the Gemara goes on, Ksiv hacha vayireh b'nei Hashem uksiv hasam kilo el chafetz rasha'ata lo yigur chara. V'amar Elazar, my dichsiv yedechem damim aleyu. But say, what does it mean when it says your hands are filled with blood? Elu hamenafim biyad. These are the people ultimately, again, menafim biyad literally means they commit immorality with their hand. Again, another reference ultimately to motzi zar levatala. Turn to the Shmuel, lo sinaf. Remember, lo sinaf is one of the 10 commandments, which we normally assume refers to what? Do not commit adultery. But Chazal also dashnit lo sehei b'cha niyuf bein biyad bein beregel. Ultimately, again, do not commit acts of immorality with your hands or with your foot. Tan Rabbanan. So Rabbi say another incredible Gemara. Hagerim v'mesachakim b'tinokos makvinas hamashiach. Gerim, converts, and I will say mesachkim b'tinokos. Those who play with children delay the arrival of Mashiach. What is this talking about? So Bishlam Gerim kid Rabbi Chalbo. So we'll say I understand the statement of Gerim because Rabbi Chalbo says Dam Rabbi Chalbo Kashim Gerim liYisrael kisapachas. We'll say an incredible Gemara. Rabbi Chalbo says that ultimately again Gerim, converts are difficult for Klal Yisrael like a sapachas. We'll say, what's a sapachas? Sapachas means a lesion, tsaras. Literally, gerim are as difficult to Klal Yisrael like tzas. Now, what does that mean? So if you look at Rashi, Rashi says over here, kisapachas dichsiv begerim v'nil v'ager aleim v'nispachas al beis Yisrael loshon sapach shekashon Yisrael kisapachas she'ein became a missus u'maviyim paranos v'od shema lemeidim Yisrael ma'asem mipnei morizek. So first thing in Rashi is a lot of times people who convert are not genuine. They're not genuine. I'm saying not every person who converts is genuine, and a lot of times a person converts for a variety of ulterior motives. The gerus is not genuine, and as a result, they end up bringing down the Jews around them. Either because they're not careful with their mitzvahs, they bring some of their behaviors, ultimately again from their previous Gentile life, and have a deleterious effect on Am Yisrael. That's one opinion. I will say I have to share with you something amazing. There's a Tosas in Kiddushin. Tosas in Kiddushin on Daf Ayin Aleph Amud Aleph says as follows. Same Gemara about this. Same Gemara here. Also, Kash Gerin Yisrael. Tosas says, this is incredible. Lefi Shagerin Bikiyin b'mitzvahs, because everyone knows Gerim are especially proficient in mitzvahs. Umedaktikim bahem kash, and they're so medaktik. Those Gerim are so frum. And what happens? Kashem liyisrael kisapachas. The Gerim are terrible for us natural-born Jews. Why? Demitoch kain hakadosh baruch hu maskev anosim shel Yisrael. So both say Tosas is opinion. The kasha gave me the well, what happens with the sapachas? I'm a good-looking guy, and I have a sapachas. Right? That sapachas mamish ruins my whole look. Right? So what happens? The Gerim sometimes put the rest of us to shame. That how could it be that someone who's born into this is not medaktik b'mitzvahs like a ger? So it's actually incredible. One statement, two polar opposite approaches. Kasha gerim l'sarkes sapachas either means not every ger. In fact, the Gemara seems to feel most gerim are not genuine. Most gerim do not come with a complete heart, bring their Gentile baggage with them, and as a result have a negative effect on Klal Yisrael. Tosis, just the opposite. People who convert are usually the greatest mitsuyanim. They're the best. They're the cream of the crop of Klal Yisrael. And at the end of the day, they put the rest of us natural-born Jews to shame. So the Gemara goes weiter. So that's the Gerim. So the Gemara says, Ela mesachakim b'tinokos mahi. I'll say, what does it mean? Those who are mesachik b'tinokos delay the arrival of Mashiach. Ilei mishkav zachar. We'll say if he's talking about the chas Hashem, we're talking about homosexuality, right? Mishkav zachar b'nei skilin inhu. We'll say so. It can't. So to say that homosexual behavior delays the coming of Mashiach, I will say, so that at the end of the day, that's not a proper statement. That's a chiyuv misa. But say, remember again, whenever we speak about these things, also always so important to qualify that we're condemning the behavior and not the person. Right? They will say every person does averus. Every person. So some people have their weakness in Shabbos. Some people have their weakness in Mishkav Zachar. Some people. So again, whenever b'nei skilin inhu means the behavior, just like Chil Shabbos, by the way, is b'nei skilin inhu. So Mishkav Zachar is also, but that's not a statement about the quality and importance of the individual. So incredibly important. A lot of topics to cover. Not Ela derech evarim. Rather, also says the Gemara derech. I will say derech evarim means that when a person goes ahead and rubs themselves against another person in a way which does not represent intercourse, but ultimately again creates hotzah zar levatala. To which the Gemara says b'nei mabul minhu. But I will say ultimately again, that's b'nei mabul. So, Ella dinesibi ketanas. Rather, we'll say, okay, so what does it mean? What does it mean? Dinesibi ketanas. Rather, we'll say is apparently there are men who would purposely marry younger girls who were incapable of having children. They didn't want to have kids. They wanted to have relations, but they didn't want to have kids. The lav benos aludininu. The Rabbi Yossi ein ben David ba ad sheichlu kol neshama shavagav. So we'll say, so Chazal are actually saying, obviously, societally things are different. People were marrying much younger, but Chazal frowned upon marrying a girl who is not capable of having children, because ultimately, again, at least part of the yesod of marriage is to try to establish a family. But let's say I'm not held liable for the results. I'm just held liable for the process. So at the end of the day, to marry a girl who's incapable of having children, Chazal frowned upon that. I will say, there's not talking about a woman, there's talking about a young girl who just biologically cannot yet have children. Shneimar kiruach milafana yatov u'neshamos ani asisi. Because I will say, the Gemara says, Mashiach can't come until all the neshamas are empty from the guf. The guf is a chamber in Shamayim. It's the chamber that houses ultimately the neshamas. Mashiach can't come until all the neshamas are emptied out from the guf. Because of that, a man who intentionally marries a young girl who is incapable of having children, Chazal frowned upon such a union like that. Good. Ba'anoshim tikatzis. We'll just finish up. So remember again, the Mishnah said that a man is not supposed to check himself, and if he does, his hand should be cut off. Ibailu, dina tanan only two satanan. We'll say, is this a din that we cut off his hand, or it's like a curse? Right, his hand should be cut off. So the Gemara says, dina tanan kedu Rav Huna katzas yad. So we'll say, is it like a din like Rav Huna? Right, we'll say Rav Huna once had a guy's hand cut off because he was about to strike his friend. So we do see, by the way, they're based in probably more to the story, but. Right, I will say, but Lamaisa again, Rav Huna did order, right? Because a person raises his hand against his friend. So Rav Huna had a guy's hand cut off. Only two satan, or is it just a curse? Tashma, the Tanya, Rabbi Tarfon Omer, Yad la'amati katzeitz al tiburo. I will say, if a person puts his hand, ultimately again by the aver, you should cut it off even if the hand is resting on his stomach, on his navel. Amr lo yeshiv lo kotz b'kreis lo yitlenu. And if a person has a thorn in his lower stomach, lower abdomen, he shouldn't take it out, or that would be putting your hand below the navel. Amr le lo v'alo kreisun ifkas. But if you have a thorn in your navel, I will say you don't remove it, it's going to be problematic. Amr len mutav tibaka kreisov al yered lever shachas. Better to have your stomach explode than to descend into the pit of depravity. I will say Rashi points out over here, this is hyperbolic, right? This is guzma. Chazal are trying to express us, Rabbosai, the care and concern we have to take not to come to Otzah Zar Levatala. So if you say the Gemara is actually espousing a halacha, that's why it says that a stomach could explode. But I will say, if it's just a curse, then at the end of the day, what does it mean? His stomach explodes. I will say, just to finish up, Lo sagi de laval tiburo elahikam Rabbi Tarfon kalamachnis yado lamata mitiburo tikatses. Rabbi Tarfon goes so far to say that it will say not only are you not supposed to touch yourself, but a person even has to be careful not to put his hand beneath his navel. Your hand shouldn't go below the navel, right? Because I will say that in and of itself could lead one to arousal. Says Rabbi Tarfon, what happens if a person has a thorn embedded by his navel? He shouldn't take it out. His stomach's going to explode. His stomach's going to explode. It's better for his stomach to explode, but let him not descend into the pit of destruction. I will say, in other words, that halacha l'maisa. Rabbi Tarfon saying better to go ahead and even suffer a little bit than to run the risk of otzad zera levatala. But I say that last piece is not halacha l'maisa, right? A bit hyperbolic, but again sensitizing us. Rabbi say, I will just tell you just very, very, very quickly. Shulchan Aruch Paskins in Siman Gimel Sif Yudan Arachayim Yizar Shel Yochaz Ba'ama V'Yashtin. When urinating, a person has to be careful not to touch themselves. Imlo me'atara ulamata, except Rabosai by the very end of the tip. There, a person is permitted to hold themselves. Why? Mipnei shemotzi shechvas zera levatala, and of a concern that a person will come to waste zera. Ela imkein hu isnasui. The exception, of course, is if a person is married, because then even if there's arousal, a person has a permitted way to satisfy that arousal. Omidas chasidus lizor afilu anasui. And the Shulchan Aruch Paskins, it has a midas chasidus that even if a person is married, ultimately again to try to be careful with this and to only hold oneself from the edge of the tip. We'll say shkoyach. We'll stop over here and we'll pick up with the Mishnah tomorrow.